Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. My name is Davina Azri and my student ID is 25019046. And this is my final project video of basic reading. I'm going to read a text and find a transition sentence and reference sentence. For this video, the text that I use is Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban. And I'm going to read it from chapter 10, The Marauder's Map. The Marauder's Map. It was a map showing every detail of the Hogwarts castle and grounds. But the truly remarkable thing were the tiny ink dots moving around it, each labeled with a name in minuscule writing. Astounded, Harry bent over it. A labeled dot in the top left corner showed that Professor Dumbledore was pacing his study. The caretaker's cat, Mrs. Norris, was prowling the second floor, and the poltergeist was currently bouncing around the trophies room. And as Harry's eyes traveled up and down the familiar corridors, he noticed something else. This map showed a set of passages he had never entered, and many of them seemed to lead right into Hogsmeade, said Fred, tracing one of them with his finger. There are 7 in all. Now, Filch know about these 4. He pointed them out. But we sure we're the only one who know about this. Don't bother with the one behind the mirror on the 4th floor. We used it until last winter, but it's caved in, completely blocked. And we don't reckon anyone's ever used this one, because the whomping willows planted right over the entrance. But this one here, this one leads right into the cellar of Honeydukes. We've used it loads of time, and as you might have noticed, the entrance is right outside the room, through that one-eyed old crone's hump. Moony, Wormtail, Padfoot, and Prongs, sighed George, patting the heading of the map. We owe them so much. Noble man, working tirelessly to help a new generation of lawbreakers, said Fred solemnly. Right, said George briskly. Don't forget to wipe it after you've used it, or anyone can read it, Fred said warningly. Just tap it again and say, mischief managed, and it's all go blank. So, young Harry, said Fred in an uncanny impersonation of Percy, mind you behave yourself. See you in Honeydukes, said George, winking. They left the room, both smirking in a satisfied sort of way. Harry stood there, gazing at the miraculous map. He watched the tiny ink. Mrs. Norris turned left and paused to sniff at something on the floor. If Filch really didn't know, he wouldn't have to pass the Dementors at all. But even as he stood there, floated with excitement, something Harry had once heard, Mrs. Weasley. But even as he stood there, flooded with excitement, something Harry had once heard Mr. Weasley say came floating out of his memory. Never trust anything that can think for itself if you can't see where it keeps its brain. This map was one of the dangerous magical objects Mr. Weasley had been warning against, aids for magical mischief markers. But then Harry reasoned he only wanted to use it to get into Hogsmeade. It wasn't as tough he wanted to steal anything or attack anyone. And Fred and George had been using it for years without anything horrible happening. Harry traced the secret passage to Honeydukes with his finger. Then quite suddenly, as stopped following orders, he rolled up the map, stuffed inside his robes, and hurried to the door of the classroom. He opened it a couple of inches. There was no one outside. Very carefully, he edged out the room and behind the statue of the one-eyed witch. What did he have to do? He pulled out the map again and saw, to his astonishment, that a new ink figure had appeared upon it, labeled Harry Potter. This figure was standing exactly where the real Harry was standing, about halfway down the 3rd floor corridor. Harry watched carefully. His little ink self appeared to be tapping the witch with his minute wand. Harry quickly took out his real wand and tapped the statue. Nothing happened. He looked back at the map. The tiniest speech bubble had appeared next to his figure. The words inside said, "Descendium." "Descendium?" Harry whispered, tapping the stone witch again. At once, the statue's hump opened wide enough to admit a fairly thin person. Harry glanced quickly up and down the corridor, and tucked the map away again, hoisted himself into the hole headfirst, and pushed himself forward. He slid a considerable way down what felt like a stone slide, then landed on cold, damp earth. He stood up, looking around. It was pitch dark. He held up his wand, muttered, "Lumos," and saw that he was in a very narrow, low, earthy passageway. He raised the map, tapped it with the tip of his wand, and muttered, "Mischief managed." The map went blank at once. He folded carefully, tucked it inside its ropes, then, heart beating fast, both excited and apprehensive, he set off. The passage twisted and turned, more like the burrow of a giant rabbit than anything else. Harry hurried along it, stumbling now and then on the uneven floor, holding his wand out in front of him. It took ages, but Harry had the thought of honeydukes to sustain him. After what felt like an hour, the passage began to rise. Panting, Harry sped up, his face hot, his feet very cold. 10 minutes later, he came to the foot of some worn stone steps, which rose out of sight above him. Careful not to make any noise, Harry began to climb 100 steps, 200 steps. He lost count as he climbed, watching his feet. Then, without warning, his head hit something hard. It seemed to be a trapdoor. Harry stood there, massaging the top of his head, listening. He couldn't hear any sound above him. Very slowly, he pushed the trapdoor open and peered over the edge. He was in a cellar which was full of wooden crates and boxes. Harry climbed out the trapdoor and replaced it, blended so perfectly with the dusty floor that it was impossible to tell it was there. Harry crept slowly toward the wooden staircase that led upstairs. Now he could definitely hear voices, not to mention the tinkle of a bell and the opening and shutting of a door. Wondering what he ought to do, he suddenly heard a door open much closer at hand. Somebody was about to come downstairs. "And get another box of jelly slugs, dear. They've nearly cleaned us out," said a woman's voice. A pair of feet was coming down the staircase. Harry leapt behind an enormous crate and waited for this footstep to pass. He heard the man shifting boxes against the opposite wall. He might not get another chance. Quickly and silently, Harry dodged out from his hiding place and climbed the stair. Looking back, he saw an enormous backside and shiny bald head. Buried in a box, Harry reached the door at the top of the stair, slipped through it, and found himself behind the corner of Honeydukes. He dug, crept sideways, and then straightened up. Honeydukes was so crowded with Hogwarts students that no one looked twice at Harry. He edged among them, looking around, and suppressed a laugh as he imagined the look that would spread over Dudley's piggy's face if he could see where Harry was now. There was shelves upon shelves of the most succulent-looking sweets imaginable. Creamy chunks of nuggets, shimmering pink square of coconut ice, fat, honey-colored toffees, hundreds of different kinds of chocolate in neat rows. There was a large barrel of every flavor beans, and another of fizzing whizbees, the levitating sherbet balls that Ron had mentioned. Along yet another wall were special effects, sweets, drawable bass blowing gum. Now, after reading the text, the first thing that I can find is reference word in page 734. It was a map showing every detail of the Hogwarts castle and grounds, but the truly remarkable thing were the tiny ink dots moving around it. It refers to the Marauder's map. Another reference word that I can find is from page 736. He slid a considerable way down what felt like a stone slide, then landed on cold, damp earth. He stood up, looking around. It was pitch dark. It referring to the place that Harry landed on. From page 735, I can find the transition words. The text is, Harry traced the secret passage to Honeydukes with his finger. Then, quite suddenly, as stopped following orders, he rolled up the map, stuffed it inside his robes, and hurried to the door of the classroom. Then is a time type of transition.